Our project is on Russian oil and its effects on Russia's economy. What do you call a gassy Russian? Vladimir Putin. Look at Vladimir holding Ukraine. I think he likes it. We broke our project into 4 different sections: the historical, economy of Russian oil operations, and current events.
This is a historical overview of the Russian oil industry. Peter the Great was the first to acknowledge Russia's vast resources. He established the mining office in the year 1700, which first documented and registered Russia's natural resources. The mining clause, he established a mining clause in 1719, which gave all the mineral rights to the Tsar, all the mineral rights of Russia's territory. Baku was conquered by the Russians in 1813. This is very important because Baku became Russia's main oil producer in the pre-revolutionary era. Gennady Romansky toured the United States in 1864. He visited Titusville, Pennsylvania, saw all the oil boom going on there. He took the knowledge from America and applied it in Baku, which started Baku's first oil boom. The first oil well was drilled by Colonel Artyom Novensky in 1865. The Baku Oil Company was Russia's first joint stock company, which is in 1874. This is important because it would lead to Russia's first nationalized oil company. The revolutionary years were very turbulent for the oil industry, and oil flatlined due to this turbulence. It wasn't until Lenin came along and increased production with the 5-year plan, which started to recover from that. World War II was also disastrous. Operation Barbarossa, the Germans targeted Russian oil facilities, which cut production. They didn't recover until the post-war era, where Russia started to supply oil to Europe. USSR supported the Soviet bloc by supplying half-price oil to those Soviet nations to boost their economy and have their allegiance in the Soviet Union. In the 1980s, oil prices fell, and on top of U.S. sanctions, Russia came to a decision. They either had to increase oil prices to raise revenue for their already in-debt government, or maintain low half-price oil prices for the satellite states to maintain their trust. They chose to raise oil prices, and this caused the satellite states to go into debt and to take out loans. This led to disasters in their economies, which eventually led to the collapse of the whole Soviet Union. Post-Soviet Union production, Russia dropped out as one of the world's main oil producers. It dropped to a low of 6 million barrels a day in 1996. Russia opened its oil industry to foreign companies investing. It adopted a free market style economy, which helped the recovery. Vladimir Putin came along and established 2 large monopolies, Gazprom and Rosneft. These oil monopolies helped provide the Russian government with about half of its revenue to spend for government spending. And the oil industry today has recovered to Soviet Union levels of production.
Alright, this is Logan Broadmax, and this is the economy of Russian oil. Economic overview. Russia has a resource-rich land and is the 8th largest economy in the world. Russia depleted many of its resources during the Soviet era by using dangerous drilling operations such as water injection. This increased productivity during the time, but would later hurt its economy. Sanctions against Russia due to Ukraine could hurt Russia's oil companies, and in turn hurt Europe and parts of Asia thanks to their dependence on Russian oil. If crude oil drops low enough to make Russia go into a recession, the better part of 2 continents will follow. Dependence on oil. Russia's economy is highly dependent on oil. The vast amount of oil has affected many characteristics of present-day Russia. Oil is about 20% of Russia's economy, 55% of its export earnings, 40% of its total tax revenue, and Europe gets about 1/3 of its oil from Russia. There's just a $5 per barrel drop in price. Russia loses about $6 billion per year. If oil falls to $75 per barrel, Russia will lose up to 3% of its economic growth. Petrostate. Petrostate is a country largely dependent on petroleum. Russia has many characteristics of petrostate. A petrostate is created when a country with weak checks and balances is flooded with revenue from petroleum. You end up with a jobless, volatile economic growth, and the economy follows a boom-bust cycle of oil. Crude oil is very profitable, but doesn't create many jobs. Only about 2 out of 76 million workers in Russia work in the oil and gas industry. And about half of the tax revenue for Russia only comes from 10 businesses. This low tax base will cause many problems, and it can lead to corruption due to a small amount of people having a large pool of power.
Russia is the second largest producer of dry natural gas and the third largest oil producer in the world. Russia, on average, produces 10.4 million barrels per day. Most of Russia's production is dominated by domestic companies which are under state control. It has 40 oil refineries with a total crude oil distillation capacity of 5.5 million barrels per day. 79% of crude oil exports go to the European countries. Russia has an extensive pipeline network which is owned and ran by Transneft, which transports 88% of crude oil they produce. Druzhba is the largest pipeline right there, which runs 2,400 miles long and has a capacity to transport 2 million barrels per day. They export 7.4 million barrels per day of crude oil, 13 million barrels per day of fuel oil, and 670,000 barrels per day of diesel. The main oil fields, Roshneftekhino field, produces 300 million barrels per day, but is 85% depleted. The Smolotor field is produces 844 million barrels per day and is 73% depleted. The Pragsioki field produces 680 million barrels per day and is only 14% depleted. The last one, the Lankorsioki field, produces 168 million barrels per day and is 81% depleted. As you can see, a major problem is the aging oil fields and the major depletion. The big major petroleum companies are Gazprom, which is the largest extractor of natural gas in the world. It produces 32.3 million tons of crude oil and 12.1 million tons of natural gas. Lukoil is the second largest oil producer, producing 89 million tons of crude oil. Rosneft is the largest oil company, where a majority of the company is owned by the Russian government. TNK-BP was a growing publicly traded company, but then Rosneft bought them out, making them the largest oil company, and they produce 146 million barrels.
So now we're at the current events for Russia, and we're going to start off with some background with the Ukrainian Revolution. Traditionally, the Ukraine was a anti-Russian country after 1991, and they elected recently a president who was very pro-Russian. Some of his policies were not looked well upon, and this led to protests and violent riots, as you can see, and eventually to him fleeing the country. As he fled the country, this ended the Ukrainian Revolution, and he was impeached. The next day, the Ukraine decided to take Russian off as one of the official languages. This enraged many of the pro-Russian states in the Ukraine, such as Crimea. So Crimea decided to declare its independence and was annexed by Russia. This illegal annexation led to sanctions, of course, by the Americans and the European Union. These sanctions, of course, does not allow Russia to export oil and natural gas to Western allies. This has dire consequences for Russia due to the fact that, as you can see here, they're losing $200 billion just from not being able to trade with Europe. So they have a new trade partner now in China. They just signed a new deal. There's two sides to this deal, or two sides of the coin to this deal. One is that they signed a very good deal in terms of they're now strategically aligned with China, whereas China also got a bargain for the deal, which could lead to adverse effects for the Russian economy. Now, this is all important because we are actually currently in a Cold War with Russia. We've had two proxy wars at this point. One, the 2011 Syrian civil war, and currently with our involvement in the Crimean crisis. And so this is important due to sanctions and Russia's weak economy and their alliance with China versus America. This could lead to a third world war, which would, of course, be terrible for everyone, all due to oil. So, anyways, to end it, we've got a summary of everything we've done. We started off with an historical overview, moved on to the economy of Russian oil, had Russian oil operations explained, and then we just talked about our current events. We hope you enjoyed this presentation, and that's it.